Um, yeah, dude, I was saying to you when we touched base on Tuesday, it's funny because I reckon the last time we caught up, it must have been 2.5 years ago. We were going for a run down around Yarra Bend, and we
Yeah.
were both single men in the sense that we had no kids, we had all the time in the world, and it was only when we touched base on the phone the other day that I thought, oh my gosh, well I've got nearly a 3-year-old and a 7-month old. You've got one of your own. It's it's sort of been a little while
Yeah.
since we've caught up.
I know the world went crazy, and yeah, things changed. I mean, a lot of things changed for the better, obviously, with having a couple of kids, and yeah, probably got a few more kgs on the old frame since then as well.
You look fit. I was thinking that actually when your face popped up, you look like you've still been doing plenty of training.
Yeah, still trying to. Just yeah, keeping busy on the bike and just a bit of running. No events or haven't done a triathlon since March last year. But yeah, just enjoying training and yeah, having a bit more spare time to spend with yeah, with our kid and obviously coaching.
Yeah, man. I reckon the first time we met, it must have been, was it 2015? It was out with mutual friends, Andy O'Connor. We were running through the Dandenongs. I don't know what you were training. Say that again.
I still I still tell people that story. There's that hill that we went up in the Dandenong Ranges, and was it you guys? You all knew about it, and you ask a very long-winded question, or a question requiring a very long-winded answer at the bottom of the hill, and then watch as the person absolutely gasping for air the entire way up, while you guys just sit and listen. And yeah, you got me a good one.
My recollection of that story was you outplayed me at my own game because we'd been running up there for a little while, and you're right, we called it Life Story Hill for whatever
Yeah,
reason. Just when there was someone new out there, we would do exactly what you said, try and ask them a real long-winded story or real long-winded question and
yeah.
force them to answer. But I remember asking you, and you were very direct. You got the job done well, and I thought, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure you might have thrown a few questions back on me, and it turned out to backfire in a big way. But what were you training for back then? Were you training for Ironman as well? Because I know Andy and Brent were sort of right in Ironman world at that stage.
Yeah, I don't remember. I might have been. I remember I was signed up for one Ironman, and then it got cancelled because they had a clash with the Grand Prix, and then I just never. That was the last one that was supposed to be the full Ironman in Melbourne, and then the event moved on. So yeah, I mean, I could very well have been, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Were you training for anything specifically through COVID? Like I know you said you hadn't been doing anything too event specific at the moment, but
Yeah,
it
yeah, I did my first half Ironman. Yeah, at the end of COVID, I did Geelong half Ironman, which was great. I mean, once the pools open, I could train, and yeah, I mean, it was almost a bit of a blessing being able to train, having a bit more training time, just because there was a lot less coaching going on, basically. So I guess I used it as a bit of an opportunity to have a go at my first half, and yeah, I mean that was an experience. I reckon I was cramping about 2 kilometres into the run with about 20 k's to go. I'm full leg cramps, and yeah, it didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to. So I fronted up and did Shepherd at half Ironman 2 weeks after that, just to have another go and just see if yeah. And I mean that race went a lot better, so I felt like the training was worth it. I guess managed to squeeze 2 half Ironmans in, and then yeah, did a couple last year as well. So yeah, I mean, said one of the very few positives to come out of COVID was getting the opportunity to sort of do that level of training.
What was that's a pretty quick turnaround. I'm not super familiar with the triathlon world. I'm not as confident in that world as I am sort of with running training, but
Yeah.
2 weeks seems like a really short turnaround for something like a half Ironman, is it?
It was very much like wait and see how you are after a week. Like if it was a full Ironman, I'd say definitely not. It just smashes your body. And I think even if you feel good, I think once you start getting back into full training, like I know our mate Mark's done it before, Mark Bormanis, and he's sort of come back too early and just your body falls in a heap. So yeah, I felt okay after a week, and so I gave myself till the Tuesday, Wednesday, the following week, so about 3 4 days beforehand to make a call, and I was feeling all right. So yeah, gave it a go, and yeah, I actually responded really well and did a much better time. So yeah, just I don't know whether I was lucky or what, but yeah, it was good to have. It was good to be able to have another go.
Yeah. Well, had you changed anything with hydration, or like what was the cause of the cramps with the first race? Do you think?
I'm not sure. I went and did some salt testing, like testing to see how much sodium I was losing through my sweat, and thinking that that might have been the cause because I didn't feel like I'd gone too hard on the bike or anything like that. But did start to feel a little twinges in my quads towards the end of the bike leg. But yeah, the salt testing came back that my sweat rate was normal and stuff. So they just said I might have just biked a little bit too hard on that leg. So yeah, just a bit of. I mean, it's your first long distance or really long distance event like that. I guess you know things that you learn from it and learn what your body's capable of and learn how to sort of pace those things a little bit better. So yeah, the three races I've done since then have been, I wouldn't say not painful, but less painful than that first one at least.
Yeah, it's such a weird world, the hydration world. I'm
Mm.
right in it at the moment because I'm not sure if I told you on Tuesday, but I'm gonna run the Melbourne Marathon this year. I had such a
Yeah,
yeah, I had such a nasty first experience with it where I think I overestimated my natural ability and underestimated how much is required to run a good marathon. Which, like, based on how many marathon runners I've run with and spoken to, I mean, it was
yeah,
the dumbest mistake, and I paid for it dearly in the second half of the marathon. But one of the things that I've been doing actually, I've got it right here in front of me. I've partnered up. I don't know if you know Precision Fuel and Hydration. I don't know who you did your sweat test through.
yeah. I use precision
Um,
for mine. Yeah,
Yeah, these guys. I had Andy Blow on the Relax Running podcast, which is obviously my membership. You know a little bit about that,
mm.
but having him on like and just picking his brain around the hydration element, I knew nothing. Even when I was
Yeah,
competing as a middle distance runner, there was never really that much research going into the way to hydrate and fuel effectively. And I guess you get away with that for a certain extent over 1500, even in the longer runs. Like I wasn't really running much more than 90 minutes back in the day, but
yeah,
just trying to get my head around how to stay up with the carbs and how to replace
yeah,
sodium and every other electrolyte has just been such an eye opener to me. So I've still got like 23 weeks till the Melbourne Marathon, but
yeah,
I've started to just try and do a little bit of research because otherwise I know I'm going to get there. And I had that experience in a couple of last quarters of football as well, especially early in
yeah,
the season when I returned to footy from running, where I would get to that last quarter and I was like, oh, something's really badly wrong. And it's a horrible feeling. And I've got a mate actually who, have you heard of Sweat Elite?
no, I haven't. No.
Sweat Elite. It's like a really popular YouTube channel at the moment. It's got like 110,000 people following it. But a guy I used to race against, he runs it, and he used to be an 800-meter runner, and now
Yeah,
he's getting really close and trying to crack 220 for the marathon. And he's been
yeah,
on target to sort of run about 218 at 35 k's. But then for whatever reason, he's been struggling to navigate his way through cramps. And I've
yeah,
seen too many of his videos now to go, all right, well, I can't let this be. I can't let this be me.
yeah.
So he's been my inspiration to try and dodge it. How did you sort of structure your half marathon, your half Ironman hydration? Did you go in with a bit of a plan?
Full marathon as well. A couple of years ago, that was my first one of those too. But and I mean, I was the same. I think I got to 32 k's, and I felt amazing. And then 32.5 k's, I felt like I'd been run over by a bus. Like it just hits like within 30 seconds, you go from feeling great to feeling, yeah, like walking almost. So it's, and yeah, once you can't undo the pace that you've done in the first part of the race, I find. So, like, if you've overdone it, you're going to be paying for it for the rest of it. So, but yeah, structuring the half Ironman training was, I had Simon Hearn, who's was a pro triathlete doing my program for me, which made it a lot easier. But it was generally sort of 2 or 3 runs a week, 3 bikes a week, and then a couple of swims a week. I mean, swimming's definitely, yeah, a labour of love, I guess. I hate it. I just hate it. It's just the most monotonous, boring. I feel so jealous of the people that come from a swing background that are good at it and actually enjoy it. Because yeah, those hours in the pool are just torture for me. So yeah, a couple of swims a week, sometimes 3, and yeah, just squeezing in what I can basically. But yeah, it's a big commitment.
Yeah, it's a massive commitment. It's actually funny you say that because my wife always says to me, she's like, I don't know what you enjoy so much about running. Like to her,
Yeah,
anytime she runs, that's a labor of love. She's doing it purely for the fitness results. Whereas for me, I'm 100% on the same page as you. I had a couple of issues with calf strains over the last couple of months. And as a result,
yeah,
I found myself in the pool far more than I like to be in there. And obviously, a mutual friend of ours, Brenton Ford, who's a swimming coach,
yeah.
I've watched enough videos of his just to see what he's talking about with technique to know that what I'm doing is so wrong, and I must I must look so ridiculous. But that's the thing
Yeah,
with running. At least you can be out there looking silly, but have a podcast in your ear and see some
yeah,
different sights. But there's that black line at the bottom of that pool. After about four
yeah,
laps, I go, well, this is it. Like, thank God I can only do
yeah,
about 2K
yeah.
before I'm exhausted because yeah, there's not much about that interests me.
No, just monotonous and boring. I mean, Brendan's an amazing dude. I did one of his clinics, in the lead up to my first half Ironman, just to, do a bit of, just correct a bit of technique stuff because I was sure, like similar to you, I was sure that I was doing a lot of things wrong, and it really helped. It didn't make me enjoy it anymore, but it still really helped. But yeah, I mean, swimming's just one of those things. It's like you go down to the pool and you can be as strong as you want, but then you see, 12-year-old kids who have literally not a muscle on their entire body and they're just so technically perfect that they're just, they're incredible. So it's one of those things that just takes a lot of time and refining those technical things, I think.
Yeah, a lot of athletes or a lot of triathletes I've spoken to have said that it's probably the one event that if you have to be bad at something, be bad at the swim with an Ironman because it takes the least
Yeah,
amount of time. So I guess we've got that on our side. What would
yeah,
be your
yeah.
strongest leg, do you reckon? Are you better on the bike or better at the run?
I'm always just slightly better on the run in terms of, ranking within the field. Yeah, run and then bike and then swimming, a very distant third. Yeah, but I mean, I enjoy cycling and running. Cycling, I just enjoy because you can get out with mates and do your training with people a little bit easier. But yeah, any of the land based ones basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd be in the same boat as you. You said Simon Hearn broke the program for you. He's another bloke who, the last time I saw him was at Andrew O'Connor's Bucks party. I think we were looking out from the St Kilda pub at our mate
Yeah,
Andrew locked in a cage, and at that stage he was just a fairly good triathlete. I remember at the stage he was about to go up to the Gold Coast, I think, to train and compete, and it blew my
yeah,
mind because he was and I didn't have a heap to do with him. Um, but Andrew sort of every now and then would give me a bit of a heads up on how he was going. And then I
yeah,
saw after about 18 months of him being away that I don't know what time he did for the Ironman, but it was incredible. Like, do you know how
yeah.
fast he got through the Ironman?
Oh, I couldn't tell you exact times, but I mean, he won. He won a couple. Like he was more sort of focusing on half Ironman, distance events, and building up towards doing the full. So I'm sure he did a full, but I'm not sure what time he did. But like he was winning. He won a few sort of biggish Australian events and was doing really well. And like I mean, he's yeah, he's just a physiological freak. Like just what he was doing on run legs in particular was amazing. But yeah, he's taken a step back from it. He moved to the sunny coast and they've settled down there. But he's sort of decided to prioritise his career and stuff. I think at the moment, so he's just taken a bit of a step back and he's more into CrossFit at the moment. I think his wife's into it, and yeah, they're dedicating a lot of time to that. So very different.
It's so funny. I feel like regardless of what you're funneling your energy towards, like an Ironman or a distance run, it makes perfect sense to get sick of that particular event and go, okay, I'm going to focus on CrossFit because I think
Yeah,
we're fairly similar breeds, aren't we? I've actually never done a structured CrossFit class, but I've got a couple of friends who have done it. And I feel like I can see a little bit of that same mindset. You have to be, and I say this in a complimentary way, you have to be a little unhinged, a little bit
yeah,
crazy to be really good at it and just have the ability to punish yourself, which I think coming from especially an Ironman world, and you know Simon better than me, like
yeah.
I mean, it just makes perfect sense. So, yeah, have you found out how he's going in that world? Because man, the CrossFit one's unbelievable. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos just to get a bit of a vibe of what's
Mm,
going on there and people's ability. And I've got so much appreciation for this. Some people's ability, just in endurance sports, to push themselves past what should be possible really blows
yeah,
my mind. And I think if there was one group of athletes that you could potentially respect more than an Ironman based on how much they punish themselves, I think surely
Yeah.
CrossFit would be in the top one or two.
Some of the I don't quite understand how it all works, but from what I gather, there's sort of different workouts that you do or different sort of events that you do like as a workout, and yeah, some of them are just like a decent run followed by some crazy number of reps of certain weights things, and then another run. Like it's yeah, I think yeah, I mean, Simon said he goes there and he's a weakling basically. Like you said, everyone's super encouraging, but like for him to go from being, the absolute beast in his sport to going there and barely being able to do some of the weights, like they're incredible, incredible athletes. So yeah, I think it just it takes time. It's certainly like a different body type that excels in CrossFit versus triathlon, where they're just carrying no weight, versus CrossFit where they're quite beasty, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how he goes, because obviously he's got the engine and the strength. So whether that translates, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I reckon the only thing that works in his favour now, in terms of what he's putting his energy towards, is I think the average CrossFit class goes for about an hour, doesn't it? So even if you're
Yeah,
doing 7 classes a week, like what are you guys
he,
doing when you're training for your half or your fulls? Like you're on the bike for 5 or 6 hours some weeks.
yeah, I mean, like it's sort of, 15, 20 hours. I mean, that's just doing it as a recreational athlete. So like Simon was, I mean, just from a time management perspective, like he was doing all his, like he had a treadmill and his bike trainer. So he was doing all his training inside, and he'd be on the trainer like 5 hours at a time. Like it's just, I don't know how he does it. Don't know how people do that. Just sit there and stare at a screen with your, tucked down like this, watching Netflix for 5 hours, just bending the legs over. Like I'd go, you know, insane. So yeah, credit to him for being able to do it for so long. But yeah, not for me.
Nah, I before I got on here, actually, I went to the gym, and today was leg day. I had a strength session,
Yeah,
and then I'm doing 5 days of running at the moment, just to sort of welcome my body back into some more intensive styles of running, or just to
yeah,
build up the K's in my legs a little bit. So on the 6th day, I'm doing sort of strength and a cross training session, and I was on the elliptical just for half an hour. And after
yeah,
about 12 minutes, I was like, I cannot believe I've got 18 minutes to go. I didn't
yeah,
have I left my phone in the car, so I didn't have my phone. It was just me and my thoughts in the gym, and I was like, this is an unbelievably boring task. And
yeah,
yeah, whether people are doing those Peloton rides or they've got the screen, I mean, regardless of how good a documentary is, for 5 hours on a bike, I've
yeah,
got I've got no interest in. Especially at the moment, one thing, even with the marathon training, I'm a little nervous just on the time element of it, because obviously got 2 kids running around here. Don't want to throw my wife
yeah,
under the bus too much. It's almost for a hobby athlete. It's almost too big a ask for your wife to give you the tick of approval to start going out there and training for an Ironman, let alone marathon. I don't know how
yeah.
she's going to cope when I get into like the 30K long run period, but at least they're only there for 7 or 8 weeks.
Yeah, correct. But yeah, it's a very fine line, I think, between sometimes between yeah, what's acceptable at home and yeah, making sure you're pulling your weight. It was a lot easier when they were just a really little bub, because just they sort of just blob there for a while. But once they're walking around, it's yeah, it takes a lot of time, which is awesome. But yeah, just makes it hard.
It's true, man. I reckon if there's one bloke who could maybe justify it, it's people like you and Brent. So for everyone listening, my introduction to you, well, the first introduction, I'm pretty sure the first time we met was that run that we were
Yeah,
speaking about, and I remember you telling me that you did a little bit of netball coaching then. I was like, oh yeah, cool, like that's interesting, netball coach. And I didn't think too much of it, and then that was well before I knew anything about memberships and just that way of living. And I'd spoken to Brent a little bit, who has a membership in the world of swimming, as we said. And I just assumed that Brent was the kind of guy. I mean, I just assumed that he wasn't that interested in making any money. He wasn't that interested in working a full time job. And as a result, he was just going to stick to the membership. And then as we got closer, I started to ask a few more questions and hear about the fact that he was going pretty well with it. And it just blew my mind how little he had to work to make the amount of money that he was making. I was absolutely baffled, because my introduction, or my understanding of work life up until that point was essentially just, hey, you go to a job that you love, or that you can tolerate. You make the
Mhm.
money, you put it in like a high interest saving account, which is, I mean, both really good advice. But the idea of there being any other way to work was really foreign to me. So I heard about Brent, and then Brent spoke with like a lot of respect about what you're doing, obviously, in the world of netball, which I'll let you give people a little bit of a rundown, because I think a lot of people are probably in my shoes. It seems like a foreign concept. These idea of memberships are a little bit different. It's something I haven't really spoken about that much on here before, because it's obviously a separate thing to this, but something that I've been trying to navigate since I was picking your brain about it about 3.5, 4
Yeah,
years
yeah,
ago. But what was sort of your journey? Because you had the journalism background, didn't you? So were you were
yeah.
originally working full time as a journalist, and then I'd love to hear, if you could take the baton from here, just a little bit about what you were doing, and some about the transition into the membership style of coaching that you're doing now.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I started my working career. I studied journalism at uni, and then when I finished uni, I went straight into working for local newspapers. So worked for Leader down at Mornington, and then sort of moved around a few different Leader newspapers, which just local papers, which I absolutely loved. Just the variety of you got to do sport, you got to do police rounds, you got like it was just an incredible experience and just a grounding in the industry, I guess. Didn't pay a lot, but was I loved it. And then from there, ended up moving on to the Herald Sun to work in their online sport team. And these were in the days when online was barely a thing. I think the Herald Sun online department was like a little bunker, 3 floors below all the other journos and everything. And basically, like, their job was just to upload the newspaper from, overnight to go up at midnight. Like, there was no such thing as like breaking news online or anything like that. Everything was reserved for the paper. Very different to now, where it's like everything's on within minutes. So yeah, worked at the Herald Sun, and then sort of got a job within their online sport, I guess you'd say, events team. So we'd sort of cover things like things that weren't on all year round. So like the Ashes and the Oz Open and Formula One, Olympics, Tour de France, like those sort of big events. So yeah, got to basically watch sport for a living, and do online coverage for those events, which was again amazing. Um, and yeah, I think I was there for sort of 3-4 years, and in the end, it was sort of my netball coaching that I guess probably pulled me away from that. It just, like, I mean, you can imagine like being on the Olympics and the Tour de France. The time that you're working is, it was almost like shift work at times, and I just found that really tough. To balance that with my passion for netball coaching. Just I always said you commit to a netball, or you commit to coaching something, you commit to players, and that comes first. You make that commitment, and you sort of feel like you really need to honour it. So yeah, I just found it tougher and tougher to balance it. So ended up sort of stepping away from the Herald Sun and doing freelance. So did a little bit of sport, did a lot of real estate writing, which I was still doing up until a couple of years ago, just a little bit on the side. And yeah, really enjoyed that flexibility. Had a good stable of clients, and really enjoyed, just being able to do my own thing, and work from home as much as anything. Everyone always said, like, how'd you cope with COVID? And I said, well, I was doing COVID 5 years before COVID happened, kind of thing. I just like, working on your own. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I don't mind working, by myself. And I guess, coaching is kind of the outlet where I get out and see people and interact with people at the end of the day, I suppose. But yeah, so while I was still freelancing, I sort of had this little idea in the back of my head about thinking about putting something out there to help, to help netball coaches. Basically, I was at quite a large club, and I'd sort of worked my way up through the coaching ranks. I guess I should say, like, I used to play. I played locally, and then I played at a state level, and then I played under 23s. I played for Australia, so had really enjoyed netball and sort of got roped into coaching. I actually got roped in. I think I was 23, and I was on the way back from nationals on the plane, and I just happened to be sitting next to my coach, and she sort of, I was a captive audience for 2 hours. So while I was there, she sort of floated the idea of coaching a team because they were looking for coaches, and I sort of thought, oh, I don't really know if I'm, I don't know what I'd offer the girls, but I'll give it a go. So yeah, I mean, that was 2007. And now, 16 years later, I've sort of been coaching nonstop and have, now I coach at state league level or VNL level, which is, for those who don't know netball, I guess it's sort of the VFL of netball, I guess. And yeah, I just came back from nationals a couple of weeks ago, assistant coaching with the Victorian under-17s team. So yeah, I've really enjoyed my coaching journey. But yeah, as I said, when I was in clubland, we're always sort of getting asked, um, can you come and show the coaches, your centre pass setups or your defensive setups and come and help coach them? And it's just hard to give. I mean, you help as much as you can, but hard to give your time all the time. Like you've only got so many hours in the day. So I was always like, is there a way that we could record this to, so that all coaches could access it at any time? And so that idea was always in the back of my head. And yeah, one day I just sort of thought, you know what, I'll get a camera and a little bit of equipment and start filming some of this stuff and putting it all together and put it into a website format. And yeah, that was the genesis of the netballcoach.com right there. So yeah, took a fair bit of time to put it all together and film up to get a decent bank of videos and everything ready to go. But yeah, launched in 2017, and yeah, now I've been going for 6 years, and it's it's been an amazing journey. Sort of started with a little over 100 videos, and now we've got 500 plus. We've got drills, sessions, all video based. So that I guess the biggest challenge is always how people like to learn, and a lot of people like to see coaches actually coaching it so they can see how the drill is coached. And so that's always been the focus, is sort of letting them, almost giving them like a backstage pass to a coaching session with with an experienced or an elite coach. And yeah, got subscribers from all over the world who've signed up. And yeah, I think it's just I mean, the internet and online's obviously been an amazing tool to to share that netball knowledge, and hopefully grow the game and improve netball globally.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear. It's interesting to hear as well about how people in the membership space get started. Like to hear you speak about how it came out of a practical need from the coaching world, that it was actually a resource that you could see other people would really benefit from. Is interesting to hear, because I've noticed a lot of people in the membership world, and to a degree, I feel like myself when I started, I was coming more at it from a lifestyle perspective. I like the idea
Mm,
of not necessarily being paid on an hourly rate. So from that business perspective, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But
mm,
ironically enough, now I'm getting ready to run another marathon, and I feel like I've fallen back in love not just with running, but actually trying to help people navigate their way through it. It sort of
yeah,
starts to become a bit more of a bigger thing. But in the running world, there's programs and guidance that seem to have existed for a long time, but it seems like what you've done with a netball coach, well, to me, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost seems unheard of. Yeah, it's very strange because it's such a practical thing. Like it's a I mean, there's so many things that I'm curious to pick your brain about. I guess I'll work through it one by one. But um, the fact that you've got athletes and coaches coming from all over the world is a pretty good sign that your resources is really it's taking what do you say? It's got a real footing. There's obviously a real need for it. But I had no idea that it was so new. Like, I know you're 6 years in now. For some reason, I thought that it was much older than it was. But you started coaching in 2007, so you already had essentially 10 years of knowledge,
yeah,
experience, and expertise up your sleeve. So you probably came in with, I guess, a little bit of respect and authority, to say the least, when it came to putting together the drills. But I'm always fascinated to know, even with that, to speak to people who have started memberships, the start of it always seems to be the scariest part, because obviously you said you kickstarted with 100. I think you said you kickstarted with 100 drills,
yeah,
but
about 100. Yeah,
there's no guarantee that once you launch that, there's going to be any real take up. So how did the actual, like, beginning begin, if that makes sense? How did you get the ball rolling on a membership or get the word out there?
Yeah, like just to, I guess, to backtrack a bit, like, you said I've been coaching for 10 years, but one of the biggest hurdles I probably had to get over was sort of, you know, I guess a percentage of the coaching fraternity in Victoria know me, and I'd been in the sort of the VNL or state league coaching space for a little while. But at the end of the day, I was sort of like, who am I really? Like, am I, am I, you know, will people actually, buy into what what I'm putting out there, and will they actually enjoy my content and actually sort of, I guess, believe what I'm saying and believe that I know enough about netball. Like, so yeah, I sort of, I don't know, maybe felt like a little bit of an imposter for a while. So that was just something I had to get over, I suppose, when I put it out there. And yeah, I just I guess I had no guarantees or no certainty that it would go off and that people would sort of sign up to it. But just yeah, put it out there. Builds a little bit of a following on social media, and then just put it out into the universe. And I don't know. I guess at the time there probably wasn't. There's been similar or other programs that have come out since, but at the time there probably wasn't anything that coaches had seen that really kind of targeted the kind of things that they needed in their day-to-day coaching. Like, you ask, most coaches, what they most need, and they're just like, we just need drills. We need drills. Like, they just want drills to fill their training sessions, and so that they've got some new and engaging stuff to take to their teams every week. And I guess at the time clubs and coaches were trying it, and it was hitting a bit of a sweet spot, and word sort of spread a little bit, and yeah, coaches just sort of came on board.
Yeah, so it's mostly a coach's tool. Like, you don't have players signing up just for a little bit of extra assistance and guidance, or like what's the actual? Because I've seen your website and I've seen how it actually breaks down what you sell. Like, I see it's optional to individuals, but I don't understand the structure of like netball clubs very well. From what I see on
Yeah,
your site, it looks as though most netball clubs might have a number of coaches who can benefit from a program like what you're offering.
yeah, it's definitely targeted at coaches. I know there are some players who have signed up, because it's got footwork drills and things that they can do themselves at home. But yeah, it's predominantly targeted at coaches. Like, the content's very much, it's a coach on camera explaining the drill, but then also explaining the coaching points, and picking out things that the players are doing and saying, you might coach it in this way, or look for these cues to sort of step in and coach your players. So yeah, very much targeted at how to help coaches not just take the drill to training, but also be able to coach their players through it. So yeah, the structure is, the majority of coaches just sign up for themselves, but then there's also club subscriptions and club options for clubs. Like, some clubs have 5 coaches. Some clubs have 50 coaches that are coaching. Like, it's an amazing, like, you don't realize how big netball is until you start hearing from clubs and seeing how big some of these clubs are, and just the number of kids and coaches that are playing. And yeah, it's just amazing. So yeah, there's options for big clubs to provide the resource for all of their coaches, and upskill their coaches, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's two really interesting scenes you're involved in. Like the journalism one, there's so much that I'd love to talk to you about there as well. Because I was actually doing a little bit of reading about that today. Because I hear, I don't know if you've heard, but I saw that Vice has pretty much, or New York Times wrote an article to say that Vice are on the brink of bankruptcy. They're trying to sell,
Yeah.
and it just opened up a whole can of worms or a whole heap of questions about I guess revenue models for big companies like that. And I know that in the world of journalism, there's membership equivalents with things like Substack, where the viewers or the readers come on and support the actual creator of whatever content it is that you're taking in. Because
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that mainstream media is dead by any means, but definitely the way that they seem to raise funds and make their money seems to be changing in a pretty big way. But to go from that, you were saying it was at times a lot like shift work, to going into what you're doing now, where I know when it's your baby and you can put as much or as little time into it as you like, it can become almost obsessive if you're anything like me, where there's constantly something to work on, there's constantly something
Yeah.
to adjust and make and edit, and not only that, there's constantly potential ideas that might or might not work. Like you're never short of something to put your time and attention towards. But from a sort of a mental perspective, just transitioning from that world of journalism, which was very much shift work, to gradually doing your own thing. Like, how did you go with that transition? Because obviously, I know it was, you said even up until a couple of years ago, you were still writing for, a couple of clients. But I mean, that transition had well and truly already started there. Did you have trouble with that? Because one thing I still wrestle with, to be honest, is like, if I've got everything that I want to get done in a day, there's there's no guarantee that just because I work more in a day, it means I make more money, which is a very foreign concept. Some days I can do
Yeah.
nothing and make more than a day where I work for 12 hours, which I really struggle with in the moment. Like, how did you go with that whole experience?
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess for me, it's never just been about, and I'm sure for you as well. Like it's not just about the money. For me, it was just like wanting the flexibility to be able to pursue my coaching and be able to give, everything I could to that, because that was, I've always said, like, and when kids ask about, for career advice and that sort of thing, I say just, whatever you enjoy and you're passionate about, like you're far better off, pursuing that than you are, a job that you think is going to, make you $1 squillion or look good or whatever. Like, follow what you're passionate about, and then, just see where you land. I think you'll find you'll be a lot happier. So, that was, I mean, that's why I went to freelance instead of sort of full time normal work, so I guess probably not too much of an adjustment then going to what I'm doing now with the netball coach and creating content for that. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an adjustment, and my wife would probably. I guess it's kind of accessible all hours of the day. Like last night, I got home from state league coaching at about midnight, and before I went to bed, there was a couple of subscribers that just needed something needed to be sorted out with their account. So I'm doing that at midnight, kind of thing. Like it's odd hours sometimes, and kind of have to be flexible around that. But then at the other end of it, there's flexibility as far as looking after our toddler on certain days, and being around the house and being available to him, and also being able to jet off at 4:30 if I need to, or 4 o'clock if I need to leave early to get to coaching or something. So I guess pros and cons to both, I suppose. But yeah, not too much of a difficult transition from freelance journalism to this. Just yeah, different times of day, I suppose.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I guess that slow transition is sort of just gradually, it gives you a little bit of callus or a little bit of flexibility, or at least some idea of what it is that you're stepping into. Um,
Yeah.
I like that. I like what you said about the idea of it being something just to create a little more time for you, just to be able to focus more specifically on your coaching. So, like, ironically, like the idea of creating a membership like this gives you more time to focus on the structural part. Like, when you say that, I've got no idea. Like, obviously, Jock up, my mate. He's sort of taken a leaf out of your book, just in a slightly different field with football, and
Mm,
he's started doing the footy coach, which I'm sure you've seen. And
mm,
one thing that I've been really interested just talking to him, because he's a few years into his journey now, is just how all consuming that world of coaching can be. And it's given me
yeah.
a little bit more of an appreciation for the role of what a coach actually does, and to hear about not only game structures, but dealing with individuals and emotions, and
Mm,
highs and lows. And it's, I mean, I'm such a novice at it that I wouldn't even know what goes into planning a session or
mm.
planning game day. But is that what you mean? Like, when you're trying to create some more time for you to actually be able to focus on the coaching side of netball, like what does that side of the work look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I guess might be sort of pertinent to talk about what my week looks like, and like I'm like Monday's the night off. Tuesdays, some nights I'm out watching some of our development players playing when I can. Wednesday night is match night for state league, so I'm heading off at 5:30 and not getting home till midnight in at the state netball centre. We've got 3 teams and I coach 2 of them. So Wednesday night, then Thursday night is footy netball. So the club that I coach at down in the southeastern suburbs, we've got training down at Dingley, which is tonight. Friday nights, usually hopefully a night off, although when I had the last few months while I've been involved with the under-17 state team, Friday night was a training night every second week, alternating with Sunday mornings. Saturday's match day for footy netball, so for that southeastern team, and then Sunday morning, some Sunday mornings for state team. Sunday evening is state league coaching for Hawks, where I'm the head coach there. Then do it all again the next week. So it's sort of 5 or 6 coaching sessions at different places throughout the week. So it's kind of all consuming. Like it's initially when I started in 2007, it was one team, just coach on a Sunday and then coach on a Tuesday night. But sort of you get pulled into this little bit and pulled into that little bit, and would you mind coaching this, and would you have a look at doing this, and it's hard to say no, because you see how much the kids, how much the players want it and need it, and how much the clubs are just crying out for people to put their hands up for coaching, not just in netball but in all sports. Like, it's so hard to get people to volunteer these days, and people are time poor and people are busy. So I certainly never made a lot of. You certainly don't get into to coaching local sport to make money. It's very much a passion, but one that I feel really strongly about. And through all those 16 years, I've only been at 3 clubs. So it's I sort of go there and stay there and get more and more and more involved, much to my wife's horror. It's definitely a passion.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's a similar conversation with Jocka, just to hear about, like, he's coaching down here at Geelong Falcons, and the amount of time that he's putting in there. It's mind blowing, and I think that's where the exposure to the amount of work that a coach does. Because I always gave coaches, like in the running world especially, it's very rarely that coaches probably get the credit that they deserve. Like one of my good mates, Adam Diddick, he's a coach of Jess Stenson, who's Commonwealth Games champion, like a 2:25 marathon. Like, she's unbelievable, and a big part of that success is not just her own talent and hard work, but just the work that actually Adam has put into her, of understanding her as an athlete, and the highs, the lows, the emotions, everything else that we've sort of touched on. That's probably a big part of the netball world as well. But it's a I don't know how you feel in the netball world, but it's often, from what I can understand, a fairly thankless job. Like, a lot of the love, a lot of the kudos goes towards the players rather than the brains behind it.
Oh, look, at the end of the day, it's about the players, and the payoff is when you see them achieving things, either as a team or individually, whether it's a selection thing. But some of the best memories are just seeing players, achieving things outside netball, and giving them a positive place to come and enjoy their sport is really important. It's a big part of what we try and do at the clubs that I'm at, is that it's inclusive, and you feel like you're part of something that's bigger than just turning up and putting your runners on each week. You really feel like you're part of a team and a club that's that values you, I guess. There's the time that you're at the courts and that you're doing your coaching, but you don't sort of factor in the time that you spend planning it and thinking about it outside. Like last Wednesday, state league, we didn't have a great night. We lost, both of my teams lost in games that we'd sort of set ourselves for, and it felt like it took 2 or 3 days. You felt like you're thinking about it for the next 2-3 days. Like, where did we go wrong? Where we prepared? Like, what can we do differently? So it's very all consuming. And as much as it'd be, I find it amazing when coaches say they can sort of switch off and compartmentalize it all. But yeah, when you're doing it, as much as some of us are, it definitely it definitely eats up your thoughts a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine that's true. What do you so in the evenings, almost every evening of the week, apart from a couple, you're pretty much going down there to coach or watch or just observe the world of netball. But during the day, obviously you got your little guy on a Tuesday, I think you said. But in and around all that, like what are you doing with your spare time? Because I think the other side of memberships, which I have sort of touched on, is just the amount of flexibility in terms of you can do what you're doing, discounting the actual face-to-face coaching from anywhere. So it opens up a whole heap of time in the calendar to fill. Like when you're not running, when you're not cycling, like what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, well, and to be honest, I'm just working. I'm just working on the product and working on the business, like helping members if they've got questions or things that need doing on their subscription. So yeah, like it's and obviously constantly trying to put out new content that sort of engages coaches and helps coaches with their coaching. So yeah, I mean you sort of think it's going to, and it does allow more flexibility with the lifestyle. However, I'm certainly working more hours now than what I was when I was working 40 hours a week as a journo. Yeah, because it's your baby and it's your business and like you love it, and so and you want the coaches to love it as well. So it's a lot of time and in it out of hours work, I guess, to make sure that happens. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny just the different approaches that people have, like Brenton, who we've mentioned a few times now. Whenever I ask him what he's been up to during the day, I know before I yeah, and I know before I even ask him what his answer is going to be, it's either I've been surfing or I've been angry because the surf's terrible. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to find some middle ground because I feel like I lean towards, what you just described. I fall in love. I get really obsessed. I really enjoy a lot of it, apart from,
Yeah.
delete admin from that, which is a big part of it. And I'm a fairly happy man, but yeah, I'd like to develop the ability to to be a little more like Brent. Outside of
Yeah.
it, I'm my little hobby that it frees me up to do. I don't know if you've seen. I've been doing a whole heap of stand up comedy, which
Yeah.
I've
I
sort of
saw.
fallen in love with over the last couple of years. And I mean, it's a sick industry to be involved in the sense that does nothing for your confidence or your ego, especially as you're trying to improve. And at least with a membership in the early days, you can work on that and develop it in private, and you can just slowly release it. Whereas with comedy, it's been the feedback's immediate, which is helpful, but also humiliating a lot of the time.
So much admiration for anyone who gets up on a stage and puts themselves out there like that. Like, I know how nerve wracking it is doing just public speaking, talking about netball and talking about topics that you're very comfortable talking about. It's still nerve wracking getting up in front of people. So getting up and putting yourself out there with jokes you've written yourself is, yes, it's got nothing but admiration for anyone who does that.
Oh man, I remember saying the same thing a couple of years ago, and I think I mean I stand by it because it's such a thrill. When it goes well, it's amazing, but when it goes badly, you're like,
Yeah.
I can't leave that there because that was humiliating. I used to work at a church. I don't know if you knew that I was a youth pastor at City
No.
Life Church for a few years, and
No.
there when you speak to a church congregation, like it's in the very nature of where you are, you have to at least for that hour be a nice person. So no
Yeah.
one's going to heckle, no one's going to be nasty. So even if you preach the shittest message, which is irrelevant, not interesting, out of context, people sit there politely. But yeah,
Yeah.
comedy's the flip side of that, where if you get halfway through a joke, like someone could call you a dickhead and throw a beer at you, and you just you got
Yeah.
to try,
Yeah.
which never happened at my church. You got to just try and navigate your way through. But it's a very interesting scene. Man, do you ever miss the journalism world at all?
Yeah, I mean, getting paid to watch, all their favourite sports, and like, I mean, this time of year in my previous job, or at the Herald Sun, like I'd be doing the NBA finals and just watching NBA all day and just doing updates on that. So like, like that, yeah, that's dream job really when you think about it. And like I said, I did the London 2012 Olympics, so it was just I mean, I was still based in Melbourne, but was just up, overnight, reporting on what was happening in the Olympics. Like it's, it was an amazing experience and an amazing job, but yeah, don't miss the hours and. Just I guess you've done a few different things over your lifetime. Sometimes you just know when it's the right time and just feel like it's you've been doing it for long enough and it's just time to try something different and take your life in a different direction, I guess.
Yeah, it's such a foreign world to me. But as I said, like the last couple of weeks, I've been interested in it. I don't know if you've been
Mm.
following the since Elon took over Twitter. Obviously, they've been releasing the Twitter files, and it's
Yeah.
been really interesting. I listened to a podcast with Michael Schallenberger, who Michael Schallenberger and Matt Taibbi is the other guy. Sorry, that's the guy I was referring to. And I'd
Yeah.
never really listened to much like any thoughts of journalism outside of articles that have been written, but
Mm.
in terms of all consuming, like in specific regards to what these guys are doing, it sounds like it's a job which, I mean, it could keep you up at all hours of the day, all times of the night, just depending on when information's coming out and when there's certain meetings. And I mean, it sounds like it takes a certain kind of personality to really
Uh,
thrive in that field.
Totally. And I think with everything being so instant now, like, there's no such thing as like when being in local newspapers, the paper came out once a week, and so you'd sort of have your stories and you'd be sitting on them for 4 or 5 days, knowing they were coming out the next week. But now it's 24/7, and if you sit on a story, someone else is breaking it. So the I guess the pressure to be contactable and to be active in the news space, all day, every day. Like, yeah, it must be very tough to be a breaking news journo in the current landscape, because just a lot of pressure not to get scooped, or not to get you don't want to be the last one to the trough, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it's been interesting. I don't know if you've been following it at all. Like, I know I mentioned the Vice situation, and I saw
Mm.
Tucker Carlson. Well, I think he was fired or he quit from Fox, and Don Lemon was fired from CNN. And I heard just in looking at some of the news today that platforms like BuzzFeed and things have gone bankrupt. It seems like a very quickly changing industry. Like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's just something that I've just been fascinated in for the last few days because again, when I was a kid, you just bought your newspaper, like you said, and then as a
Yeah.
journalist, you would prepare your articles for the following week and or the following day
Mm.
at the latest. But now,
Mm.
as you say, it really is a breaking news thing. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but just for those couple of
Yeah.
minutes, like I'm keen just from a bloke who's been in the industry a little bit, just to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I always say to people that when I started in local newspapers, which was 2005, like that was probably at I guess, the end of the peak of print news. So like our newspaper had an editor, two journos, photographer, and then an entire ad team. Um, and it was probably still high performing, profitable, but then within probably 3-4 years, like things had changed. Like I mean, it's just advertising revenue in the end. Like it just things had started to dry up. Purse strings tighten and things start to move online. And by the end of it, it was sort of, rather than one editor for a paper and two journos, you'd sort of have one editor across three papers, and one journo covering two papers, and just things started to become very tough. Yeah, I mean, it purely comes down to advertising in most cases, and same online now. Like a lot of those huge online businesses and companies are struggling, and a lot of them are having to move to. I mean, the Herald Sun obviously is now or News Limited is now a subscription model with some advertising, but very much subscription based. And yeah, just that those previous models of expecting advertisers to pay out big bucks, and running the business off that. I mean, those days are just largely gone. And so the industry's changed a lot in the last 15, 20 years. It was kind of just a bit scary to sort of watch it unfolding and wondering when the next round of redundancies were going to be, and watching a lot of those newspapers that we worked on when we were starting out are now closed, or they're purely online, or yeah, it's a very different landscape for anyone getting into the industry now.
Yeah, that's one thing I heard a lot today. It was a lot of ad revenue talk. So is that just pretty much from my understanding, they were explaining that because there's so many competitors now, like you don't just have
Mm.
the big newspapers or the big news outlets. You've also got like your Daily Wires or your Breaking Points style shows, which are more internet based shows that
Yeah.
advertisers are interested in getting on board with as well. Is it pretty much just that there's such an opportunity to disperse that advertising revenue that it's hard just to justify giving it to one particular newspaper or yeah.
I mean, it's not my absolute area of expertise, but they've just I think advertisers have just got so many options now. Like, do you get value out of putting your money into a big advertising campaign with a big company, or do you get the same value spending less money getting an influencer or something
Yeah.
to push it out to their social channels? Like it's a I guess a rapidly evolving landscape of sort of companies looking for different ways to get a return for potentially less money, I suppose. So yeah, very tough and hard work, I think, in the advertising landscape.
Yeah, it'd probably be a whole nother podcast. I'm sure it's something that I'd be fascinated
Yeah,
to pick your brain more about. But mate, I know I've got to go get my little man from daycare. For everyone listening, it's what is it now? It's 4:30. We're supposed to record at 9 a.m. this morning, but some painters decided to paint just outside my office, so he had to push it back. So it means that we're both a little more limited for time. Yeah, but mate, appreciate you jumping on. I knew it was going to be fun to talk to you. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, and I'll let you get out of here.
all good, Tyler. Thanks for having me. And yeah, said if any netball coaches out there, jump on the netballcoach.com, and yeah, love to hear from any coaches out there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll link that in the show notes below for anyone interested. So, all right, I'll leave you to it. See you later, everybody.
Thanks, Tyler. Cheers, mate.